Okay, this possibly was all a little bit complicated, the triangulation. So we're going to do a little review of the whole process, and you can pause and look at the diagrams and so on that might be helpful. So first of all, Richmond pointed out a high point of land, and we look over at that land. It's kind of a plateau. So what we're going to do, take our bearing on, or our sighting on, is kind of the middle of that plateau area, because that would correspond to the map. So then we see here Sasha taking a sighting, and then when he moves the dial on the compass, keeping the red needle at 340, he moves the dial on the compass with the red arrow on the base plate pointing at the high point. It comes out at 212 degrees. Okay, so here's the part, the critical part, where we transfer that bearing we took on the high point to make a line on the map that's going to cross where we're standing, hopefully. So if we look on the left panel here, there's two panels, I call them the left and the right panel. Left panel first, and if you look at the bottom right of that left panel, number 1, it says sighting line previously set at 212 degrees. So that's what we just did. That's the red arrow on the base plate. Okay, then we go up to number 2. What we do is we set the compass on the map so that north on the dial points to north on the map. And we can orient it so that one edge of the base plate goes roughly where along the line we think between us and that high point, roughly. But the critical point here is that we set the meridian lines, those vertical lines inside the compass, so that they're parallel to the grid lines on the map. So that's number 2 at the bottom, top of the diagram here. Now this is a little different than Richmond did it, because Richmond started by putting the edge of the base plate on the high point and then kind of shifting it around so that the meridian lines were north and south. You can do it one way or the other. My preference is to kind of start with the meridian lines north and south there, and then what we do is we move the whole base plate to the left in this case, keeping the meridian lines oriented with the grid lines. We move the base plate until it crosses the high point. So that's number 3 at the left of that left panel. So that we don't actually do that here. And if we go to the right hand panel, we have now moved it so that the edge now goes through the high point of land. And then what we do is we draw a line along that edge of the compass. So maybe just have a look at that process and make sure you understand it, because this is the critical part of transferring a bearing to the map. Okay, we got our first bearing transferred to the map. So now we want a second one. So Richmond pointed out to us that if we look kind of to the northwest from where we were standing, we could just see where the cars cross the top of Cranberry Lake. And that corresponds to a pretty specific point on the map, as you can see in front of you here. So what we want to do now is we want to take a bearing on that car crossing point. So Sasha and Kai take the bearing as before, and it turns out that when you do that, the bearing is 328 degrees. Okay, so then we go through the same process that we did before to transfer that bearing to the map. So again, we got the left panel and the right panel. So on the left panel, you can see the line, the first line, which goes through the high point. So what we want to do now is get the second line. And basically, we're repeating the process we had before. So point number 1, top right on the left panel, sighting previously set at 328 degrees. We then set the meridian lines parallel to the grid lines, point number 2, and then point number 3, top left of the left panel. We move that base plate to the left until the edge goes through the car crossing point. And then switch to the right side. That edge now goes through the car crossing point, and we draw a line along that edge. Okay, so here's our result. We've got 2 lines on the map representing the bearing, a line along the bearing to the high point, line number 1, line along the bearing to the car crossing point. And where those cross is our best estimate of where we are. Now it turns out in this case we know we're on the trail, and fortunately our calculations and so on were accurate enough that that's right where it shows us. We're actually on the trail. But even if there wasn't a trail there, we would still know exactly where we are. So that's what we use it for. In the case of, as we already knew we're on the trail, we really know 1 line to cross it. However, having 2 lines gives you a better estimate. And then having 3 lines actually even gives you an even better estimate. So here you can see we've taken, we didn't go through the process, but we've theoretically taken a third sighting or bearing through another high point, the line number 3. And we've got 3 lines in the map. And what this does is create a triangle, hence triangulation. And then our best estimate of where we are is in the center of the triangle. So if you don't have the trail, you need at least 2 lines to tell where you are, and it's a better estimate when you have 3 lines or 3 bearings to tell where you are. But obviously it depends on where you are and what you can see and what you can transfer to the map. So 1, 2, or 3 according to what you're able to look at. But right here, that's what triangulation involves. Okay, taking 3 bearings, transfer them to the map, then you get a triangle, and you're within that triangle. And again, it turns out that it's on the trail as it's shown on the map, so it seems our sightings and so on were fairly accurate. So that's what triangulation is all about, and it enables you, by reading the map and using the compass, to tell where you are, even when you're not on a known trail. But you can look around the land and look at points that you can recognize on the map. You can then go through the process of triangulation with at least 2 lines, preferably 3, enabling you to tell exactly where you are on that map. And then, you know, if you had to call an emergency or something, you could actually give the actual points on the map and in the coordinates. You can give the coordinates for where you are on the map to let emergency know. So that's what it's all about.